Distinguished guests, friends, colleagues, ladies and gents, a very good evening to you all. My name is Fatima Warita Hassan. I'm a barrister, founder of No Passport Voice, and a visiting professor at Asian University for Women, Chattogram, where I teach law, gender, and international human rights. On behalf of the team at No Passport Voice, I would like to warmly welcome you at this webinar commemorating the Human Rights Day 2020. We are also very pleased to have the support of Human Rights Media California for this virtual event. It's no doubt that we're living through unprecedented times, and this year's theme of the day is Recover Better, Stand Up for Human Rights. I like a quote from Nelson Mandela, which is who's all-time a leading advocate of the common ideal, defined by the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. He stated that to deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. And as we celebrate Human Rights Day today, these words resonate more strongly at this difficult time for the entire world. For the last 16 days, activists and campaigners have been calling out to the world to eliminate gender-based violence, and the 16 days of activism ends today on the Human Rights Day. We all agree that gender-based violence is one of the most prevalent of human rights violation. And in this conjuncture, I would like to share some of my thoughts. Human rights are every individual's inherent fundamental rights, and the cry for human rights traces back to the era of 12th century and perhaps even earlier. Some of the examples being the adoption of Magna Carta in the 13th century that recognized certain liberties, the French Revolution, and so on. So in the 18th century, a number of instruments such as the French Declaration of the Rights of Men and the US Bill of Rights were enacted, granting citizens rights against the actions of the state. And the moral transgressions which took place during the World Wars quivered the conscience of the world and led to the adoption of the document we commemorate today, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So the United Nations since 1948 has done considerable amount of work to promote the rights proclaimed in the Universal Declaration, and conferences, dialogue, seminars have been taking place worldwide since decades, which are designed to intensify efforts in the field of human rights. Many countries have adopted human rights clauses in their domestic laws and regulations for the safeguard of basic human rights, which are intended to apply and elaborate the standards of the United Nations. And the collective efforts of the state, the United Nations, the NGOs, the INGOs, and activists like you and me should bring a potentially significant contribution to the effective protection of human rights at all levels. Human rights have evolved over time, and as a millennial, I can say many social and economic issues are being framed in the rubric of rights, and the vision of protecting such rights are not always envisaged through international instruments, legislations, or constitution, but by a host of associated civil, social, political, legal, and economic guarantees that form the substratum of a dignified life. And at this webinar, we have an illustrious list of distinguished speakers who are contributing immensely in the fields of advancing human rights. Speakers will be speaking on areas of disability rights, LGBTQI rights, women's rights, religious aspect of human rights, and minority rights. And we are very privileged to have a special address from one of the distinguished human rights lawyers of all time, Mrs. Cherie Blair, CBQC. So Mrs. Cherie Blair, CBQC, is wife of former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, leading lawyer and committed campaigner for women's rights. So Cherie set up the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women to help women build small and growing businesses in Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East so that they can contribute to their economies and have a stronger voice in their societies. She is also the Chancellor of Asian University for Women in Chattogram. On a personal note, I'm a huge admirer of hers, and every personal interaction with her has been engaging, profound, and so helpful. Her kindness and above all her humility is awe-inspiring, and I've definitely learned so much from her. So unfortunately, she could not manage to join this meeting live at this time, but she has sent a beautiful message for us and sent her warmth and greetings to all the guests, participants, and audience. I would like to share the screen and play Cherie's message for us.
Good evening, everyone. I am so disappointed I couldn't be with you this evening to celebrate Human Rights Day 2020. Fatima and her team at No Passport Voice have arranged a truly inspirational selection of guest speakers who have all made great advancements in the pursuit of freedoms and equalities for others. As Chancellor of the Asian University for Women, which is based in Bangladesh, I hold a special place for all the women who are working towards gender balance in Bangladesh. I wish No Passport Voice all the best with all their campaigns and projects to empower women and support children. I believe in the efforts of strong women, and I believe you will be successful in inspiring many in Bangladesh and worldwide. I am the voice, a voice of all, for all.
Once again, thank you, Cherie, for your support for No Passport Voice and voicing for a slogan, I'm the voice of all, for all. So we hope to have you in our conversation sometime soon again. So to welcome our first speaker of this season, of this session, actually in loss of words. He's inspirational, motivational, brilliant, hardworking, and resilient. Oftentimes we are in self-doubt, but life indeed begins at the end of your comfort zone. And Hitesh is a textbook example of that. Hitesh is a Paralympic medal winner with the Singapore Cerebral Palsy football team and the author of the book Better Than Normal, which has sold more than 15,000 copies worldwide. He has received the Southeast Asia Excellence Award, special mention of outstanding achievements for being an exceptional role model to youth all around the world. Hitesh is also a certified Jack Canfield Success Principles trainer and is featured regularly on local and global TV, radio, and magazines for his crazy mission to inspire 50 million people by 2050. Hitesh was born with cerebral palsy, but despite his condition, till date, he has touched and won the hearts of more than 3 million people from over 32 nationalities. He is consistently voted as the best inspirational speaker in every event he speaks at and has delivered keynotes at Microsoft, Tata Steel, Prudential, Great Eastern, Butler, and Josh Bank. Above all, he is better than normal. So we welcome you, Hitesh, and I know it is pretty late in the evening at your part of the world, but thank you for supporting this event and thank you for sharing your story with us.
Hi Fatima, thank you for the warm introduction. Hey everyone out there listening to this. The next 10 minutes I'm going to rock you, that's my promise. So before I start, let me just share my screen. Fatima, let me know if they can see my screen, yeah?
Yes, we can see. Yes, we can see, Hitesh.
Okay, so if you're on Zoom, just adjust your gallery view so you can see both my good-looking face and the screen. Alright, so let me quickly introduce myself. I'm a global keynote speaker from Singapore. I'm also based in India because my parents were from India. So let me tell you a bit about my background. I'm born with cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a disability, it's a neurological disorder. So many of you out there may be wondering, how did I get cerebral palsy, right? What happened was when my mother was giving birth to me, I was upside down in my mother's stomach and the doctors were told to do a C-section, means cut the stomach and take the baby out. But the doctors didn't follow the order, they did a normal delivery. So what happened was when a baby is born, right, usually the head comes out first. But I was born upside down. So my leg came out first and my head got stuck in my mother's womb. And due to that, I lost oxygen for 90 seconds, which led to a neurological damage. Now, whenever people meet me for the first time, they always ask, bro, are you drunk? I say, nah, I'm alright, but I think my doctor was drunk. Right? So the day I was born, the doctors told my parents, look, your son may die in 24 hours. Now 28 years have gone by. I'm alive, but I think the doctor died. So growing up, it was really difficult for me because my disability was 10 times worse. I couldn't even walk, talk. The doctors reckoned that I should use a wheelchair. They said I'll never be able to live a normal life. But I was blessed to be born in a good family. My parents believed in me. They knew the universe gave them such a child for a bigger purpose. They brought me up with the mindset that look, Hitesh, you're normal. You can do everything like everyone else. Don't ever discount yourself. So I was brought up with that grit mindset, right? But growing up, it was difficult because they told me to use a wheelchair. And the education system in Singapore recommended that I should go to a special school. But my parents fought the education system and made sure I went to a normal school. Now, when I went to a normal school, I got bullied, made fun of, plus I was bad in my academics because of my physical limitation. I couldn't study well, right? Now, as I grew older, I thought life will get better, the problems will subside. But instead the problems became worse. What happened was when you become a teenager, right, you undergo puberty, and when you undergo puberty there's a lot of hormonal changes in your body. And when I became a teenager, puberty occurred, I realized I was disabled, different from the rest, and my confidence broke. Plus,
Cock! You're gonna suck this cock good! You're gonna suck this cock!
oh my god, who's that? That was funny. So, what happened was, let me go back. When I became, when I went through teenagehood, I realized that I was different, yeah? And you know, when you're a teenager, girls, guys, they get attracted to one another. But too bad all the girls would run away from me, right? But the ladies didn't know that one day I'll be a Paralympic footballer. I'll be a global speaker doing talks all around the world. I'll be working with celebrities, and I'll be having my own brand called Better Than Normal. Right? So that's why I tell all the ladies, please think twice before you reject a guy. You never know, he may end up becoming the next Brad Pitt or Shah Rukh Khan, right? Now let me tell you a bit about my Paralympic football team. Can you see the good looking guy in number 5? Can you see Fatima? Y'all can see, yeah, the good looking guy in number 5. Of
Yes, he did.
course, that's none other than me, right? So, what happened was I joined the team in 2012. My first tournament was in Europe. I played Germany, France, Holland, big tournament. My second tournament was the Asia Cup in Korea, in Incheon. We all were so excited. I was representing Singapore. My team was chart stuff. We went to Korea 1 week early. We got ready for the tournament and we came in fourth in Asia. Fourth in Asia. Come on, guys, clap, right? Right, we were fourth in Asia, but I forgot to tell you, only 4 teams were taking part. So this is life. It's like football. Sometimes you win game, sometimes you lose game. Don't get too attached to the outcome, but enjoy the game of life. Yeah. Now moving on, I'm only given 7 minutes, so I can't share much. So all of you watching me right now, what I want you to do is like my Facebook page, subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram, look for better than normal. I'm going to give you 10 seconds, go like, follow, subscribe, better than normal. If you're on LinkedIn, you can connect with me on Hitesh R. Yeah, Hitesh R and better than normal. If you have any question, you can message me on social media. But just remember, I only reply to ladies. I'm kidding, I'll reply to everyone. Now, let me tell you a bit about my brand, better than normal. Better than normal. This is the last part. So, the people out there watching, you all may be wondering, what is better than normal? So, let me give you the backstory. When I was 12 years old, I used to get bullied at school. And one day I got fed up. Dad, why am I not normal? And how can I be normal? My dad was shocked. He didn't know how to react. But if you promise me to work hard and you promise me to never give up, he said, I promise you, forget normal. One day you'll be better than normal. And that's how I created the brand called Better Than Normal. My bigger mission is to inspire 50 million people by 2050 to live a better than normal life. So thank you, No Passport Voice, for having me here today. And I hope I managed to give a bit of inspiration and energy to your audience out there. And I wish everyone a better than normal 2021. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hitesh. You truly are inspirational. And since the time I've known you and I've spoken to you, I have taken so much motivation from you. And may you be successful in your mission 2050. All the best. And the reason why Hitesh is an amazing inspiration and a very good example for all of us is that we often see how people who are especially abled have a total different lifestyle or have very little support from the system of our countries or from the system of our homes. So there is so much to learn from Hitesh. So Hitesh, thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Featuring our special guests, I would like to invite Madam Justice Naima Haider. She's a notable personality of our country, and definitely we take immense pride in her eloquence of judgments in courtrooms. Justice Naima Haider obtained LLB Honours, Masters of Law from University of Dhaka and the second Master of Laws from Columbia University, New York, USA. She further attained diplomas in International Cooperation in Criminal Matters from Christ Church College, Oxford University, in Alternative Dispute Resolution from the University of Berkeley, California, USA, and attended Commonwealth Lawyers Diploma under the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, University of London. She also has to her credit a diploma in international humanitarian law from the International Institute of Humanitarian Law, San Remo, Italy. She is the former chair and lecturer of the Department of Law at Islamic University. She is also a former member of Faculty of Law, University of Dhaka. She joined the Bangladesh Bar in 1989 and was enrolled in the Appellate Division of Supreme Court of Bangladesh. She joined the Office of the Attorney General and served as an Assistant Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General for Bangladesh. Justice Naima Haidar was appointed the judge of the High Court Division, Supreme Court of Bangladesh in 2011. She is also a member of several committees of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, including the Supreme Court Special Committee on Child's Rights, the Annual Report Committee, and the Preservation of Heritage of the Museum of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh. She is also a member of the International Association of Women Judges. Justice Haidar is also the chairperson of the Advisory Committee on Women in Justice. She has participated in international roundtables, study tours, courses, and workshops, and presented papers at home and abroad. She has also written several articles published in different law journals and newspapers. A widely traveled Justice Haidar has keen interest in access to justice, advancement and empowerment of women, juvenile justice, child's rights of refugee women, and ethnic minorities, gender-based violence against women. Welcome, madam, and thank you so much for being our guest. It's a privilege to have you among us, and I'm very sorry for the technical problems earlier.
Thank you so much, Fatima, for the warm introduction. I'm truly humbled and gratified. Good evening, everyone from this part of the world, and a very good afternoon from those who are in London. It was lovely listening to Hitesh. What an amazing inspiration that is for all of us. When actually Fatima had approached me, I felt that today is the 10th of December, which is a very important day and an opportunity to reaffirm the importance of human rights in rebuilding the world we want. And when I was approached by Barrister Fatima Hassan, founder of No Passport, to attend this important event with such an esteemed group of panelists, especially Mrs. Cherie Blair, although she is not present here today. Did I get dropped? Okay. Ms. Aroma Datta, the Honorable Member of Parliament of the Bangladesh Parliament, Barrister Sarah Hussain, who is the Honorary Executive Director of Bangladesh Legal Aid Services Trust, and an advocate, Supreme Court of Bangladesh, and other international speakers. As I said, when Fatima had approached me, I felt that it was my obligation and promise to attend this insightful international seminar from a personal capacity to mark the Human Rights Day of 2020, which signifies the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There can be no gainsaying that human rights are infringed in various ways across the globe. The formation of human rights has fundamentally evolved over the years, gradually correlating the connection between the individual, the judiciary, as well as the state. While I'm speaking to you this evening, I would like to send my greetings to all the human rights advocates and activists in the session and across the world. I take immense pleasure of congratulating each one of you, the force for voicing for rights that bring in positive changes in the society. Our country, Bangladesh, got its independence in 1971, 23 years after the Universal Declaration for Human Rights was adopted. Human rights in Bangladesh are enshrined as fundamental rights in Part 3 of the Constitution of Bangladesh. As a growing economy, Bangladesh has been in the forefront of development in legal, political, commercial, and societal spheres. Refining our rights rhetoric to include participation of women in several sectors of the country has been a great achievement in advancing human rights. It is inevitable that we are going through unprecedented times around the globe, and the shadow pandemic of gender-based violence worldwide is real. Although violence against women and girls continue to be a global epidemic that kills, tortures, physically, psychologically, sexually, and economically, it is one of the most pervasive of human rights violations, denying girls equality, security, dignity, self-worth, and their right to enjoy fundamental freedoms. A lot of these issues arise out of outdated cultural, societal, and patriarchal norms. It is now of utmost importance to recover better, as the theme of this year is Human Rights Day highlights and stand for human rights. Advancing human rights would mean rejection of atrocity, absolutism, oppression, and shed light on our potential to live in a more harmonious, dignified, and self-determining society. I, as a sitting judge, would like to shed some light on some of the developments that we have had in the judicial decisions that restored inherent dignity and private life of women in Bangladesh. There have been various legal developments in Bangladesh with regard to protecting human rights, especially the women's rights, and like any other world, we still have a long way to go before we achieve any systematic gender balance. I take pride in one of the verdicts which was passed by the Honorable High Court, where I was the author judge and had ordered the government to replace the word Kumari, which is virgin, with Abibahito, which is unmarried, on Kabinnama, that is the marriage certificates of Muslim marriages in Bangladesh. Under the new law, under the new law, the groom is also needed to declare about his marital status. Since we have international audience today at the webinar, I would like to briefly shed some light on the background of the case in question. The Kabinnama is a written document that is signed by two Muslim partners under the Muslim Family Laws Ordinance of 1961, which is the legal evidence of their civil union and lays out the rights and obligations of the bride as well as the groom. Clause number 5 of the form demands a bride to specify whether she is Kumari, which means whether she has never been married, widowed, or divorced, or a virgin. The groom is not required to make a similar statement, and in such, against the circumstances that I just stated here and above, the writ was filed before the High Court, and the campaigners, BLAST was actually Bangladesh Legal Aid Services Trust, brought the petition before the court, which stated that the clause perpetuates discrimination between women and men and results in violation of Articles 27, 28, 31, and 32 of the Constitution. Well, it is said that it is a landmark verdict, and such developments and advancements would not have been possible if specifically the civil rights organizations did not have the space for petitioning on the matters which are of vital importance in the society. There are other judgments. I'm going to state very briefly because of the constraint of time that we have. Human rights have been advanced. There is a precedent of the High Court ordering appointment of a job for physically challenged youth under the quota reserved for disabled people. Lately, the Hindu Women's Right to Property Act, enacted in 1937, had deprived women to inherit their husbands' properties. A few months back, during the pandemic actually, the Honorable High Court, before the virtual bench, had pronounced a verdict to the effect that Hindu widows in the country are also entitled to share in all the properties of their husbands and not just their homesteads. There are many other important examples which I can cite and go on and on from the judiciary, the landmark verdict of abolishing two-finger test for a rape victim. As we advocate about rights and also raise awareness on oppression, we should also share successful and powerful stories to inspire others. I'm really looking forward to hearing the speeches from the guest speakers as they continue their efforts in advancing human rights. I, for one, is an optimist. I do not share the impression that our systems are fast collapsing to preserve advancing of human rights. Undoubtedly, we also feel, and there are challenges, that we all are in it together. And I strongly believe that with all the downsides that we have, and with all the limitations with shortages of resources and capacity in Bangladesh we still have a time-tested system. Now, I would say and reiterate that let's hope for a better world and let's voice for the advancement of human rights. In the process of it, we should be robust in identifying abuse of process and safeguarding the human rights are lived beyond the clustered halls of courts and parliament as well. In the end, I would like to congratulate the No Passport visa. No, is it No Passport? Yes. And Fatima especially for organizing this absolutely incredible workshop and the webinar. I would like to reiterate that let's be optimists, inspire others like Ritesh did and does and will continue to do so in the process. And I firmly believe in a constructive approach to promote and protect human rights, one step towards it is your and my commitment towards meaningful engagement with the state, the civil society, and as well as the international community. Thank you very much for having your patience, and thank you for giving so much of attention. Over to Fatima. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for your time and for taking part in the effort of advancing human rights. And we are grateful to have your presence. And I extend my sincere gratitude and good wishes to you as you continue your effort in strengthening justice in our country and work as the very guardian of the law.
Thank you.
So our next speaker is a name which needs no introduction, Barrister Sarah Hussain. She is one of the most quintessential human rights lawyer and defender who has many successful feathers in her hat. Undoubtedly, she has made the nation proud on many instances through her advocacy and success in the country and abroad. Sarah Hussain is a barrister practicing in the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, mainly in the areas of constitutional, public interest and family law. She is a partner at the law firm Dr. Kamal Hussain and Associates and serves pro bono as the Honorary Executive Director of the Bangladesh Legal Aid and Services Trust. She's a member of the board of the United Nations Voluntary Fund for Victims of Torture and associated with several international civil society initiatives, the advisory board of the Open Society Justice Initiative, the advisory committee of the Women's International Coalition on Gender Justice, the Bureau of South Asians for Human Rights, and the International Commission on the Chittagong Hill Tracts. In 2016, Sarah was appointed by the President of the United Nations Human Rights Council to serve as a member of the group of experts on accountability in the DPRK, and from July 2018 to March 2019 as a member of the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Gaza protests of 2018. Sarah also participated in a task force on justice convened on Pathfinders International, focusing on SDG 16. She ran the South Asia program.
Fatima, can I just interrupt you? We can post
Yes,
that
sure.
up maybe if you want. Let me get to my remarks if that's okay. I'm feeling a bit embarrassed to have my CV read out in front of Justice Haider. So shall I just begin my remarks?
Well, there are
Yeah,
many
we can go on and on. Let's leave the rest of it if that's okay, I think. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so I warmly welcome you, Sarah.
Thank
To
you,
please
yeah.
address the audience.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much. Thank you to all three of you for organizing this. And it's a great privilege to speak after Justice Naima Haider, of course, who's our senior at the bar and is very much a judge to whom we all look in terms of moving the law ahead, and particularly on issues which are close to, I think, both of our hearts and to many of those who are today in this call, which is around the issue of equality and gender equality. I think let me start by mentioning a few of the issues where I've had the privilege of appearing in front of Justice Naima Haider or receiving her direction. And one of the issues is A couple of the issues, I think, more than a couple of the issues are quite path-breaking, but I'd just like to mention them. Justice Haider talked just now about a number of major cases of constitutional importance dealing with issues around, particularly dealing with issues around gender equality. She was very humble and didn't mention her own role in those. I think two of the issues on which I think early on in my career also, I saw the difference that she made and the difference a judge can make through their own personal practice and the way in which they respond and jump to find solutions rather than problems. One was the issue around the right of adult women not to be forced into marriage. Strangely enough, it's an issue that is still of great concern to us in Bangladesh today. As this call is continuing, I'm speaking to somebody else about a situation that they're facing of that kind right now. And Justice Haider, in her court, has dealt with, I don't know how many cases of this kind, where what we've seen is that a case which in many ways socially may be considered not to be an issue at all. We assume in our country that women are not necessarily able to make their own decisions around marriage, that these decisions have to be made for them by their families, by their communities. Multiple obstacles have to be in place, are put in place in front of them. So to have a court which says, no, they will hear that woman's voice, they will hear her individually and respect her individual decision and allow her the freedom, set her at liberty in that phrase that we get in our court decisions, that makes a world of a difference. And those are some of the kinds of decisions that we've had from Justice Naima Haider's courts and from other courts following that tradition. The other place which I think for me is what I will always remember in terms of seeing that there's a way forward is cases around women's right to custody also of their children. Again, an issue which, if you look at it very narrowly in terms of what was considered to be the sort of traditional rule of Muslim law, that a woman cannot have custody of her male child after he turns 7 and of her female child after she reaches puberty, and that was seen as a rule. Again, I think Justice Naima Haider with other judges has really made this massive change, established this trend in our courts of always interpreting the welfare principle, the welfare of the child as being the primary consideration in these cases. And that's what it says in the law, but the way in which it's played out in court, as I said, by a sensitive and rights-friendly judge makes all the difference. Talking to the child concerned, giving a space, making it possible for a courtroom to be cleared and only the child and the persons relevant to be in that place. So it's not turned into a great circus, but into a situation where the issues are seriously considered. So I think I just wanted to give you these two examples to say that what makes the courts work, and as Justice Haider also said, there are many challenges, there are many problems. I could speak to you for 10 minutes about all of the obstacles and all of the problems we face, which are very considerable. And from a lawyer's perspective, even more perhaps. But I think it's important for us to focus on what we can still do and where there is space, and why it is that the judges and the courts for us are still definitely that final bulwark, that place of last resort where we can go for protections, we need to go, we are able to go, and we get a response. So these are some of the kinds of cases, whether it's custody cases or forced marriage cases, where we see that social norms are changing because of what the courts say and do, and individual lives are massively impacted. I just mentioned a couple of other cases, I think, as well. This is also, I think, again, Justice Haider touched upon this case. But maybe, I think, particularly after hearing Hitesh's remarks, I think it would be appropriate to mention this case, where, again, this is a case about a young lawyer, maybe same age of many of you who are on this call, young barristers, a young lawyer with visual impairments called Shapun Chokidar, who had graduated from Dhaka University. He passed his law exams with a scribe, with getting assistance for writing his exams and so on. He then qualified as a lawyer with passing his exams at the Bangladesh Bar Council, again having a scribe and having assistance. He then wanted to move on to the next stage in his life, to become either to join the civil service or to join the judiciary. But then he found an almost insurmountable barrier, it seemed, in his place, in front of him. both of the rules that governed admission into the civil service and the judicial service at that time said that a person with disabilities, visual impairments or other kinds of disabilities, would not be considered at all as eligible to sit these exams. So Shopun Chowkidar, along with a group of organizations, disability rights groups, rights organizations and others, approached the courts. And Justice Haider was, I think at that time, the second judge on that bench. And Shopun Chowkidar was able to secure from that bench a rule questioning why these kinds of discriminatory rules were still in place. And ultimately that rule contributed to the process of opening the doors. There was, of course, a governmental commitment, high-level commitment to ensuring disability rights, which was very important. And we saw that the combination of these factors, the judges pushing the issue, opening the door, raising the questions, combined with the policy imperatives, meant that in the end, the civil service, the barriers to entry to the civil service were removed, and exams became possible for those with visually impaired, facilities were provided to them, and Shopun Chowkidar went on, in fact, to secure a job in the Ministry of Law. He's still battling the rules about the judicial service, but I won't say more about that because that case is still pending. So again, I think the reason I wanted to mention this case to you was because I think it shows that if you decide to take something on, if you identify a clear wrong, something that is on the face discriminatory, and you're the person who's affected by it, and you have the right kind of support and assistance, then you can take that forward and you can get some kind of response. In even harder cases, I think we're also seeing that that kind of change can happen. There's a case that we had the privilege to support from Blast, another young man called Rocky, whose brother was killed in police custody several years ago. Rocky himself was also tortured in police custody. He brought a case under relatively new legislation, our Torture Compensation Act. And after battling that out for many years, he was finally able, he and his mother, who pursued justice regarding the death of his brother and her son, were finally able to secure a judgment from the courts. Now, from the lower courts. There again, they're going to fight another round of battles because one of the police officers has filed an appeal, and then it's going to be stuck in the High Court for a while. But again, that's a very difficult, very challenging issue. It's the first case where someone who's who's managed to bring a successful prosecution for torture under the Torture Compensation Act. We hope it will again open the pathways for others to be able to come forward. But again, it's something that shows the battle is very long and hard. Massive challenges that family is now going to have to fight through another couple of rounds of appeals. They're going to have to survive while they do that. The family of that torture victim is having incredible battle with survival right now. And I hope some of you will think about how to step forward and support them in this with your legal research, with your campaigning, with your speaking out. But I think these are the people, Shopun, Rocky, the women who've come forward in these cases to assert their own rights, to marry, to have self-determination in their families, to have decision-making capacity with respect to bringing up their children. All of these are the kinds of cases that show us that you know, there is that human rights are multidimensional, that they can be enforced through the law, that we still are able to do that, and that it's a collective enterprise of those who are suffering injustice, those who stand by them in solidarity, and those who have the power to interpret and to enforce the law. So I think that that's a big, hard battle and a big, you know, fight in front of us to carry on pursuing that process. But it is a process that is possible, and I think that we can definitely work together. And today, of course, 10th of December is a moment for us to think about what are the possibilities in front of us, to reflect on that, and to kind of re-energize ourselves together to take this work forward. I want to just end by, because so many kind words were said about me, I would like to end by saying, not quite kind words, but really reciprocating that I'm also very lucky to work with my colleague, Barrister Priya Asan Chaudhry. She's a young barrister, and she's a remarkable researcher, and we've worked together on some quite difficult cases, in at least one of which where she kind of broke the back of a particular legal question that none of the rest of us had been able to work out, and was able to win freedom for some, helped to win freedom for somebody that we were working with and for. So I want to thank Priya and thank you all again for this opportunity and the privilege of being with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Apa. It's so kind. And I'm surprised and actually in loss of words. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you once again, Sarapa, for sharing your thoughts with us, and undoubtedly your work towards advancing human rights have inspired the millennials like no other in Bangladesh. Though I would love to go on and on, but I'll sum it up in my thankfulness for all your efforts in working as an inspirational and courageous defender of our fundamental rights and freedom. So thank you.
Thank you.
So our next distinguished special guest is a person of content, grace, and immense passion for development. We address her lovingly as Buamashi, Aroma Datta. Aroma Datta, a parliamentarian by profession, an activist notable for her contribution towards upliftment in the lives of women in rural Bangladesh and empowerment of women, particularly promoting the decision-making process for a gender-balanced society. She has greatly contributed in developing issue-based networks and in the sector of NGOs countrywide. She has long experiences as a human rights defender and a women rights activist and as a development practitioner with a dynamic professional career for over 40 years. Worked intensively with NGOs, civil society, donors, sorry, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
She worked intensively with NGOs, civil society, donors, government, national and international forums for capacity building, institutional development and policy advocacy, and particularly in the area of local government. She has represented Bangladesh in many national and international forums and networks, particularly with UN agencies, UNESCO, including UN High Commission for Human Rights, Commonwealth Foundation throughout North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Australia, and Asia. She was a member of the National Human Rights Commission of Bangladesh. She has received the highest national award, Rokeya Podok, from the Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh for her solid contribution in the sector of women empowerment. So I take the honor of welcoming you to this platform, Aroma Datta. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you so much. I'm absolutely overwhelmed. I feel so privileged and so honored, Priyanka, for inviting me to discuss with, how would I say, I'm absolutely with the super eminent lawyers and young leaders around the world. I just listened a little bit from I just entered a little bit about what's his name?
Hitesh.
Hitesh. I just listened to Hitesh a bit, but I had the real opportunity to listen to Justice Naima Haider and Barrister Sarah Hussain, who are our pride of the nation, absolute pride of our nation. I just want to start with a quotation from Rukia Shakwat Hussain, who just had her Rukia Dibosh Day yesterday. And I take her spirit and ideology in my way of life and try to understand that how we can do things to come out from the darkness. So to begin with, she has a famous quotation. She predicted long back that women, particularly women of our country, the Bengali women, one day will become barristers and judges. And that's what I see. with her blessings, I would like to say Bangladesh has the most prominent women barristers, which I can see Sarah is one of the leading barrister and my very special and dear person. Judge and Barrister Naima Haidar, who also is our pride, and Barrister Priya Asan, just Sarah mentioned about her. So this is something, Barrister Priyanka, makes me so proud to see galaxy of women barristers sitting here, and I'm just a small fry. I am an activist. I'm an activist, and I have tried to remain with the people as much as I can, especially to fight against human rights and women's rights. Today, when we are celebrating Human Rights Day, we also have to understand that human rights and women's rights, it is our fundamental rights, absolutely fundamental rights. And we have been fighting for women's rights for so long, and it is a continuous process from all aspects. We are still on the road, and that's very true. I like the theme, no passport voice. The voice goes around the world, and there is no need to have a passport, but you also had to mention with passport, you need visa. So you have to say no passport and no visa anyhow. So what is the situation where we have come up with many laws? We do have, to begin with, many laws, particularly for women's rights violation. There are child rights violation. We have so many laws, the best of the laws that one country can ever have. But the problem remains the implementation of the laws. How much we get protected with these laws still is a big challenge to all of us. And you all are practicing lawyers and judges today. You know the real situation, but the situation has definitely advanced from what we were 30 years or 40 years before. And I consider that there are so much of problem with the minorities, the hill people, the indigenous communities. Still they are fighting for their rights. Sarah is sitting with the Hill Tracts Commission, but there is also a big gap with the indigenous communities of the plainland. And I salute the government for including the widows. I was just laughing, widow women, Hindu widow women to have access to the properties. I was thinking, what about the divorcee women? Do they have any access to any of their properties anyhow? But now I will come back to the real issue. I would like to take the privilege of the presence of Honorable Justice Naima Haidar. We have been begging, literally begging, to have an equal right law for the Hindu women rights, property rights. We have a draft already prepared, which was shared with Justice Bhabani and Krishna Devnath. We have requested our Honorable Law Minister to have a discussion, but I think there is some kind of, how would I express appropriately, some kind of particularly, there is kind of a, how would I say appropriately, the initiative. Okay, let me come to a very simple thing. The initiative is not, has happened. How can we, living in the same nation, in the same country, how can, I mean, women, particularly the minority women, will not have access to the constitutional rights and laws, because it's very much there in the Constitution. But why should we have a separate laws? And if some male groups do have problems, why can't we ignore them? Like in many other countries, they have managed to overcome this particular issue. And particularly, definitely, I mean, the minority community are very orthodox, extremely orthodox, and they would not like to share their property. And even the marriage registration was a big problem. I think you all are aware of it. So me being a woman have been working on this long back with Mahila Parishad. Sarah is very aware of it. When Justice Devi Bhattacharjee had taken that initiative, even when we did a lot of work, I was like thrown with sandals, never mind, because they considered that any women, any minority women have no rights even to demand for such a law. So this bothers me a lot. And I think me now being a parliamentarian, I have asked that whether we can bring it down to a bill. I don't know. But today when we are discussing, I would like to, request that can we sit with Justice Naima Haider, with you, with a group of us, to discuss that how can we come out of this darkness? Because if we are not doing, then we leave a black hole for the next generation. Sarah has been quite instrumental. Hamida Appa, Honorable Hamida Appa, Dr. Hamida Hussain, also was very, very vocal about this issue. Sultana Kamal, Advocate Sultana Kamal. So all of us have been together trying to change this very discriminatory situation where the minority people, particularly women, prevails. But I see a lot of good things also, as there are provisions now for inclusion of the, what do you call this, inclusion of physically and mentally challenged people to hold some offices, but there are problems where to have official positions, because I have a friend who has been fighting on this issue to get, he did fight to get a job in the university, which he didn't. But what Sarah just mentioned about Shapun Chokidar, that why he should not be accepted. So I think we need to review this as a fundamental and human rights issues. And today, when it becomes very difficult to accept the issue of rape, which I need to mention here, that it has become quite pandemic. And for this, a new law has been adopted, 2010, from 2010 to 2020. But the challenge remains, the critical challenge remains that whether the justice, whether the courts can complete this within speedy court. Otherwise, for example, there are a lot of, issues which can be adopted and discussed later on. But as it has happened with acid throwing, when it became quite pandemic, then the law for capital punishment came, and now we do not see any such cases. But I think as instances, there should be some kind of punishment given, because we cannot bear that our daughters, our sisters and mothers getting raped because it is fun or it is a political tool or weapon. So considering all this situation, we think that we have a lot to do, and with the young barristers, especially when I proudly say that we have in Bangladesh women judges sitting, and they are very well respected for their role, for the kind of judgments they provide. But we need to have an access to all of you to have some clear discussion that how best we can avoid this type of discriminatory laws and discriminatory situation, where we can talk about justice. There are still some problem with vested property. Still there are some problems. Some problems have been resolved, but there are some problems. So it makes, like today, I felt very bad, like because I'm a little bit upset. I'm very upset. Because Tanveer made a very interesting, Tanveer Mukammal made a very interesting film. So he invited me to attend the premiere show. So I'm quite, how would I say? I'm quite disturbed. I'm very, very disturbed. Because we are part and parcel of violence, part and parcel of political discrimination, killing. So when it comes to that kind of a situation, then I think that definitely I am a trailblazer, and I have to fight out. I have to really fight out, because there are some voices needs to be heard nationally, and I would like to do it nationally, because that's where we have to figure out how to resolve, because I'm the daughter of this soil. I would like to contribute before I leave this world, that there should be no discriminatory laws for any particular religious groups or women, because it hurts me, very much it hurts me. And when people talk about many kind of issues, starting from the level of migration taking place, the level of violence which takes place with women who are working abroad. altogether, we need to take a deeper look because we have come a long way. We have done so much. Today we are so proud to have our Honorable Prime Minister, who is a woman, the Honorable Speaker, she's a woman, the Deputy Leader of the House, she is a woman, the Leader of the Opposition, she is a woman. So we're not women. We have come all the way, but it's still not a smooth road to, it's a bumpy and difficult roads with thorns. But we have achieved. That's why I keep saying to myself that aren't we the blessed daughters of Ruqya Shakwat? Of course we are the blessed daughters of Ruqya Shakwat, because she predicted that there will be barristers and judges and viceroys. So we see all of them together by projecting to the world that what women of Bangladesh can do. And they have done it. And we are so proud to have all of you who are my pride. But whenever I see, because I'm very close to Sarah, I remember so many things which even reminds me of once I keep repeating, once I went to USA to give testimony on human rights and the violation of the minority rights. And then I was tortured in so many ways. But Sarah, who really told me, Aromadi, always stand for the right. And my grandfather, my whole family has sacrificed. And this is what this Tanveer's film was, that for your motherland, the level of sacrifice you do, you get killed, but you'd never leave the country. And that's what it is. I take immense pride of me being a daughter of this country, because my blood is mixed with this soil. I feel so proud about the freedom fighters, about women who were not given yet, those women who are real freedom fighters, as the title as freedom fighters who had given everything. So I would suggest that today, when we are entering into the 50th anniversary, our 2021 we'll be celebrating 50th anniversary of independence of Bangladesh. And from 71 to 2021, the roadmap has given us a lot of pain, but a lot of pride also. With that, I would like to end. I'm so proud. I'm so happy to see that our future leaders have come forward, have already come forward. So we are now have tilted in the western sky, and our daughters are now in the middle of the sky. And we'd like to give, they have already taken the torch from us, but we would like to complete some of the unfinished tasks which has been bestowed on us. My salute to all of you. I'm so proud of you. And I feel that my blood and tears have been honored. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you so much once again for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom. I'm sure every supporter of women's rights would learn from your career graph and your grace. Thank you so much. This was really impactful and powerful. Now I would like to take the honor of introducing our international guest, the very stirring Faizi Mahmood. Faizi Mahmood, a child marriage survivor and campaigner, ICRO, Iranian and Kurdish women's rights organization. Faizi is a survivor of child marriage who lost her sister Banaz in a tragic honor killing. A Kurdish immigrant raised in London, she uses her voice to speak out as a survivor, not a victim. As an ICRO ambassador and campaigner, her story and experiences have reached international audiences through a TED Talk. As well as sharing her own story, she has spoken widely on the need for changes to the laws surrounding child marriage and honor-based violence. Faizi, your story is implausible, brave, and impactful. I would like to welcome you to the platform. Over to you, Faizi.
Thank you so much, Fatima. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you for the warm introduction, and it's been incredible listening to the speakers before me. I'm so glad that we can actually be together today, despite where we are in our lives during a pandemic. And these are one of the rare times we can be extremely grateful for technology for bringing us all together. So thank you all for your time today. My name is Faizi, and I work at the Iranian and Kurdish Women's Rights Organization, as Fatima mentioned. And we are an NGO who support, advocate, and offer counseling and refuge to young girls and women from MENA communities who are affected by FGM, forced marriage, child marriage, and any sort of harmful practice which is either faith-led or shame and honor-led. And the reason I work with this charity is because many, many years ago, when my sister, in 2006, when my sister Banaz was a victim of a so-called honor killing, they played a huge role in getting justice for my sister in quite a high-profile case, which was one of the first in the UK to actually assure that the perpetrators were receiving life sentences for such a crime committed, when previously perpetrators would actually be offered some sort of lesser discount, taking into account cultural reasons for why honor killings happen. And partly part of the reason I also do the work I do is because I am also a survivor of some of the things I mentioned. And I say survivor because many women don't actually make it out alive. And as I said, certainly my sister and thousands of women all around the world, as we know it, don't make it out alive. My story really, I think I'll start by telling you that I'm a Kurdish immigrant. So my parents came to the UK in the late 90s, and my life really took quite a big turn at the age of 16. So I'm one of 5 girls, and when I was 16 and one of my sisters was 17, we were both coerced into child marriage to men, complete strangers, a lot older than us. And of course, I'm sure you'll understand, with a child marriage comes forced pregnancy, a lot of domestic abuse, sexual abuse, closely monitoring, financial abuse, and a lot of psychological abuse, which were all things that both me and my sister did experience the 2 years that we were both married. And I think the very first important point to note is that absolutely my family did let us down, and they did expose us to all these harms. But equally, the system that we were surrounded by actually did let us down quite a lot. At the time, we were both in education, so we'd already had social services into our lives at some point, so they were aware of my family. The police had come into contact with us. Yet actually what stopped the police getting involved, or anybody from the system, any agency, from getting involved and checking whether me and my sister were okay, was that there was this big fear of racism and cultural insensitivity. So in fact, it was translated that whatever me and my sister were experiencing would be no one's business, because it was part of our culture or our religion. It was the way it was taken. And so my sister, after 2 years of her abusive marriage, she decided to leave her marriage, which came with an incredible lot of backlash from community. And again, she was very vocal to police about the backlash she was receiving and taking her threats quite seriously. But again, the police were not taking it seriously, and they just completely failed to evaluate the danger that she was in. And many people that she came into contact with actually said that they had never heard of the term honor abuse, or they had never heard that a girl could actually be under threat for having left a marriage, or could even be possibly forced into a marriage. And so there was a lot of misunderstanding and miseducation when it came to my sister's case. But not long after actually she left her marriage, it was decided by several men in my family and community that actually she should lose her life because of the fact that she left her marriage. And this was followed by quite a big investigation, which led to my father, my uncle, and several other men receiving life sentences. And of course, my sister's body being recovered many, many years later, months later, sorry. And so we're now 15 years down the line, and having just gone through a pandemic when we should be very aware of these things, and these things that are coming to surface, all the inequalities that we already know women and girls face from ethnic minorities and women from marginalized communities face. And I think you would think that actually with us becoming so much more aware than before, we are all in this together and we're all suffering at the same rate, when actually we know that's not the case. And we know that there's been an escalation in abuse, and there's been so much more escalation in minority rights, for example, migrant women's rights and refugee rights. And so really when you hear people say that for the first time ever we are in this together, we're actually not. And there are dominators in this game, and there are people who lose out massively, more than they do even before. So for me, there's no better time to talk about these issues than now, and really pay urgent attention to women and girls' rights and the equalities that we see all around us. It makes me ask myself the question very often: what does it feel like to be a woman today? What does it feel like to be a migrant woman, to be a woman who is within a community where conservative mindsets pretty much rule everything? And I know from my own life that that can be quite a scary reality. And so this year I actually started my job with the charity that I work at, and I launched quite a strong campaign against child marriage, where I'm calling on the government to tackle this as an urgent issue, because currently in the law in England and Wales, a child can marry at the age of 16. Which is incredibly low, and we completely understand the harms that comes with such a life-changing decision. Yet in a country which is supposed to be so forward-thinking, so Western and so equal in rights, actually it means that parents like my parents are able to coerce their children into marriages and consent on their behalf. So essentially they can't even make that decision themselves. And so through a private member's bill, which is in the House of Commons at the moment in Parliament, and has a date for a second reading in February, we're aiming to criminalise child marriage by next year and ensure that every single child is able to make that decision not before the age of 18, and able to take onus of that decision, because it is one that is essentially life-changing, and there's so many other things you can't do. You can't vote, you can't buy a lottery ticket, you can't even buy things that you use at your wedding at that age. So really this is something that we feel is an urgent issue, and I've been working quite closely on. We have a petition which has reached over 200,000 signatures, and we've worked with several NGOs who are supporting this campaign, and also parliamentarians who are backing the campaign. And so that's where I am today. I think really to bring everything back to where we are in our lives at the moment, I think there's no better time than now to actually take these matters as urgent issues. We think that we have social media platforms where we're all able to access the internet, giving us a voice and giving us a say in what is happening, but actually there are so many that are voiceless, and these are women and girls that we are talking about whose rights are taken away from them, and marriage essentially being one of the key factors that so many women and girls have to endure by force. And I'm so disappointed. I grew up in Iran, and I always thought and dreamt that coming to the UK gave me this facade and this fake idea that actually I would be completely protected from such a thing ever happening. But the older I get, the more I realize actually women's rights, girls' rights aren't equal anywhere, and inequality seems to be such a universal language that affects so many women, especially from marginalized communities. And so I'm really, really honored to be part of conversations like this, especially on such an amazing day, because I know that when I speak, my voice it's taken me so long to actually have a voice. For many, many years, I couldn't have a voice. I couldn't have my own thoughts, my own opinions, and being here today amongst all of you is such an honor, because I feel this responsibility I have and this voice of mine that I can exercise, I'm actually doing not just for myself, but for women like my sister and so many other girls and women around the world who can't actually use their voice. And so I think that brings me to the end of my talk. I'm not sure how long I've gone on for, Fatima, but that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. And again, thank you so much for allowing me this platform to share my story with you, and to be with you all this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Paisy. I think you already know how we admire you, and I'm sure, like myself, many women across the world are empowered by your voice, by your story. And these stories are powerful reminders for us that we should not wait to be kind of get shocked by a petrifying tale of human rights abuse, but rather scrutinize the actions of those in power every day to ensure that such abuses never occur in the first place. We wish you very well. So we still live in a society where a lot of prejudices still exist, and the LGBTQI population face tremendous bias despite all efforts by social advocates, campaigners. Our next speaker is very powerful, and she would present to us her thoughts, experience, and issues relating to the LGBTQI population. Cecilia is an Asian Indian non-op trans woman of color who's an entrepreneur, musician, photographer, storyteller, activist, and a filmmaker. She writes and speaks passionately about her struggles and challenges she faced in her family, work, and community, both in the US and India. As a management consultant with top Fortune 100 companies, she educates, empowers, and advocates for transgender and gender non-binary individuals in the business world. Celia brings an amazing intersectional blend of ethnicity, creativity, culture, religion, and corporate experience in her activism. She received the 2019 Human Rights Campaign's Equality Award for outstanding commitment and services to her community. She is currently in the executive board for Trans Can Work and the VP of Stonewall Democrats of Ventura County, California. So welcome, Celia. From the time I know you, I instantly connected to you, and your vision is really powerful and impactful. So welcome again.
Thank you so much, Fatima. I'm so glad to be here. I want to start by saying that, I'm so proud to be in this amazing event where I can listen to all of you. Your stories are so important. Our stories are so important. We all started in a very humble way, and we never knew our lives would take us. Sometimes it takes this long for us to even tell our story. So my story is a little bit different compared to most of you. So I was born and brought up in India. When I was 4 years old, I knew my gender wasn't doing justice to my anatomy. At a very early age, I realized that I was different. I wanted to be a girl. And I thought it was a dream because it was just some kind of a child fun thing that I thought it was. And I told my mom, and I just was serious about it. But my mom looked at the social constructs created by the colonial British government in India, and she said, "No, you're a boy, you're not a girl." And I knew that I couldn't come out at the time because I would get bullied. And when I was 7 years old, I remember the time when my parents told me that you're not a girl, you're a boy. And I went back into the closet and I just suppressed my femininity, and I learned to survive. Every morning I would wake up with this noise in my head saying that I want to be a boy today. What can I do so that my feminine characters will not be expressed today? I won't show anything. I would play cricket, I would play football, I would do all the macho things that a boy would do, just to make sure that I don't give any characteristics of a girl. And I was living in such a man's world back in India, in southern India, Chennai, that's where I was born, that I just loved being a girl, that it was so amazing and I could only live as a girl or just in this dream world. But I was 4 years old when I just was trying to be myself. I was abused by my uncle and I didn't know why he did that to me. So when I was in my fourth grade, when I was in my fourth grade, and then 2 years later, my cousin brother abused me. I never told this to my parents. My parents, even till this day, don't know. Both of them have passed away. I didn't know what to tell my parents about. I didn't know how to express it, but I just suppressed everything and I kept it to myself. I would go to the beach and cry, and that was my therapy. I would just pray when I go to the church. All I could hear was, you're a sinner, you are a misfit in the society, you're not gonna live. I looked at the Hijra community and I was thinking that I am you, but I don't want to be you because you're getting beaten. I don't want to be that way. I want to live in the society as a girl, but I don't want to get beaten and thrown out of the train. And that's the kind of community I saw. I was scared to come out at the time. I remember that when I was in my 9th grade, that was the first time in India I was planning to come out. I wore this long skirt and a nice pink top. I put a scarf around my head like a hijab, and I walked outside in the evening. A security guard caught hold of me and he started using the most derogatory language and he started yelling at me. And I didn't know why he was angry. Just one person made so much noise, and it was close to 8 men standing all around me, and I could smell their alcohol breath on my shoulders. And then came a lot of women and they all stood around me and they humiliated me publicly. They didn't touch me, but they were pointing fingers. They used all kinds of derogatory language. And I just wish I was dead that day. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was so scared because they could do anything to you and nobody would care, because you are in the bottom of the food chain in India. And that was my story. And I didn't know what to do. And I spoke in Hindi and I just ran away from that place. They tried getting hold of me, but I walked away. I came home and I started crying and I wanted to commit suicide. I tied my hands behind my back. I put a plastic bag on my head and I just strangled myself. And I said, I'm going to die today. I was so scared when I came to the point where I was almost losing out of breath. I was afraid to live. I was afraid to die. Nobody was there to hear my story because nobody would understand what I was going through. I couldn't tell my parents, not my brother. I couldn't tell anyone. If I go to the doctor, they would probably give me a shock therapy or increase my testosterone. I was living in such a difficult world. And while I was living in this world, I was attracted to women and I was not attracted to men. So I didn't understand what was going on with me. I was going through a lot of mental health stress. I was going through gender dysphoria, as they call it now. At the time, there was no cure for it. They just thought you are just fetish or you're just living in a lifestyle that you chose. This is not a lifestyle we choose. This is our lives. And that's the kind of life I had. I thought I studied really well. And I thought maybe if I get married, this femininity would go away. I want you all to understand in this call that people like me, there are a lot of them who are invisible and are still living in the darkness. There are close to 500,000 Hijra community in India. The policies, the procedures, the standards, and some of the benefits are given more to the Hijra community and not to the invisible trans people who are living, who can be male to female, female to male, gender fluid, gender non-binary. There are a lot of them who are struggling in their own gender because gender is a spectrum. It's not a binary. I got married to this beautiful girl in 1997, and I thought everything would go away. I came to this country. I came as a successful businessman, and I did really well. I was in New York. I was working for JP Morgan Chase. I was working for different companies. I was doing really well. Professionally, I was successful, but deep inside, I was dying. A few years after our marriage, I remember telling my wife that, sweetheart, I'm going through some problem and I want you to understand. I didn't even know how to tell her what I was going through. And she said, I think you're going through some fetish. You know, men sometimes dress in women's clothes. Maybe you should just get rid of it. And I thought maybe it's that. And I called a psychiatrist and I spoke to him. I told him my story and he listened to me for 2 hours and he said, you're a feminine gay. This was in Florida. And I didn't know what to tell him. And I moved on and I spoke to another counselor who was a doctor. And she said, you need to change your gender. That's the problem you're having. And I said, no, I'm married. I'm married to a beautiful woman. I love my wife. And I have a daughter now. I don't want to change my gender. Can I live with what I have? What is going on with me? I don't understand. Why aren't there articles? Why aren't there policies? What is going on? I don't know. I want to change this. So I started discovering and I started reading a lot of articles. I have been in most scientific community in India. I was working in the first human genome project that came to India in Indian Institute of Science. And I have worked in hip crystallography. And I thought, if I don't understand, how can I explain to people? I started reading about XY chromosomes. I started reading about a lot on X and Y, and why is it just the two? It's not the 2 pair of chromosomes that decides who you are. It's 23 pair of chromosomes, 7.8 billion people on the planet, and everyone is different. Even within our own community, we are so different. And I didn't understand that. And I started reading and more I read. I went to conferences and I was looking for acceptance in the wrong place. I've been in times where I was almost murdered in Long Beach. I've been in wrong places because I was looking for acceptance in the wrong place. I went to these bars and people just looked at me and they asked me how much. And they thought I was a prostitute. And I thought to myself, I am such a respected person. And why are they treating me like a prostitute? Can't I just live like a woman in the society? And this was in US. I'm not talking about India. And I slowly came out in my community. I told my story. I told my story in 2015. The news coverage, they did a small segment on my story because they found it fascinating. A brown woman telling her story as a trans person. We have never heard this kind of a story. And I live in the most conservative part of California, in Simi Valley. My story came out and I thought people will be happy to hear my story. They said, this is a man in a dress who needs medical help. I took the newspaper, went back to my car. I sat in my car and I was crying and I said, why is my life so difficult? Can't I just have a normal life? And one thing that hit me, I can sit and keep crying or else I can do something about it. And I just stood up and I said, I'm going to do something about it. I don't care what people think about me. The first thing that I ever did was hold a sign for gun right violence. I mean, I would say gun control. I was holding a sign for immigration policies for the Latino community. I was holding a sign for healthcare for everyone. I didn't come out as a trans right activist. I cared for human beings because everybody is important to me. And when a Black person are being mistreated in the wrong way, I was there for the Black Lives Matters. I was standing in spaces where an Asian person would never be there. I was standing in spaces where trans people would not even go there. And I stood there just because I wanted to make a change in the community. And I started fighting for rights, not just trans rights, but human rights. And one thing that I found was when I studied the ecosystem of the issues that trans people go through, it was very interesting because I found that all these issues are very similar. I'm just going to share a quick slide with you. It's just the one page. When we think about a trans person, they get bullied at school. because people treat them, they don't understand them well. When they go to college, they have problems, they have discrimination. When they're in workplace, they are discriminated. And Supreme Court today is even deciding whether they can discriminate a trans person from at workplace. Housing is a problem. A lot of trans people are not given housing. When you talk about healthcare, like AIDS, sometimes even the Supreme Court, and sometimes there are policies written, as some of you shared in the call, with religious rights, which was based on Christianity and the Bible. They say that people like you should never exist. You cannot have healthcare. You cannot have an employment. We just want you to just not live in this planet. And I'm a Christian, and I started fighting against my own faith. I started talking to them about Bible because I had read the Bible, and Bible doesn't talk about discrimination. It talks about love. There are people who use faith in the wrong way. And I found that we need to make a change in that kind of a community. With immigration rights, when I'm traveling to India, I have a problem if I travel through countries that are so biased towards trans people. Veterans, close to 193 veterans who are trans exist and who live today in this country. Safety is a big problem. And I went to the police station and I spoke to them about safety. People like me, my license says gender non-binary. Sometimes police doesn't understand. They look at your license and they say that you are a man, you're not a woman, you're just pretending to be a woman, and they can arrest me. Fortunately, I've not been arrested. There are times when a person can be put in a prison which is not their gender. If I'm put in a male prison, I will just get raped. I will just be gone in the first 1 hour when I'm in the jail. And that's the kind of prison system we have, and we're trying to change that in California today. The government policies for voting and rights need to change, and the aging community as well. The reason I wanted to share this with you today is because I thought that I would never, ever live on this planet. I did not want, I never even thought in my life that I would be making a change to the California policies. And I was invited to share, along with the Latino community, to sit down with the California Endowment and come up with these policies. Such an insignificant person like me, when I walked into India, when I went back to India, same problems. Somebody called me Chakka, or Umbodu, they call in Tamil. Even after so many years, India hasn't changed. They say that they take care of the third gender. I don't think so. They tolerate you. I want to leave you with one small thought today as we look at these rights. I want you all to be our allies. When I talk about allies, it's so important for me to think about the fact that, acknowledge the fact that you are privileged and you can help people like us. Listen to our community, listen to people like us, understand why we're different. Learn to unlearn certain things that you have learned and you want to really be passionate about us. Have and instigate conversations that are difficult and tough within your own family setting, within your own office, within the courts and justice system. Instigate those tough conversations. The media presents it. The E is education. The media is always portraying trans community as the most vulnerable population. They just treat them like they need help or they just need to be tolerated. The reason why I came out is not because I wanted identity. I have a wonderful family. When my daughter was 15 years old, I told her about who I am. She accepted me in 25 minutes. My wife took 17 years. And today, both of them are one of my biggest allies, and they are cisgender. The last S in allies is support by getting involved. So I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. People like me are hiding today. I know a lot of them, like me, are hiding because they don't want to come out. It involves a lot of shame. And no matter what I'm going through, it's not Celia. I'm the voice for the trans community. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Celia, for sharing your life story with us. And you are an NPV family already, and I hope you know how much we respect you and how much we appreciate your sharing your story, sharing with us. So thank you, everybody. I'm very sorry for the few technical issues that we had earlier, and I recognize that some of our panelists need to leave, and I really want to thank from the bottom of my heart Justice Naima Haider, Madam, thank you so much for being here. Sarapa, thank you so much for giving us your time, and I'm sure thank you for your patience. And Arumadatta Mamashi, thank you so much. I am really a huge admirer of yours, so thank you so much for coming. And of course, Celia and Paisy, you both are very, very powerful, and you brought so many instances, so many powerful stories in our conversation today. So that brings us to the end of this webinar, Standing for Human Rights. And why we actually wanted to do this webinar is to kind of share stories from different communities and also inspire each other. And let's remember that our campaigns of advancing human rights should be strengthened to ensure that each citizen is not just the bearer of human rights, but in fact, they are also an active enforcer of human rights. And it's a collective effort, and we should aim for a society where criticisms are voiced in more open debates and in a dignified way. So my special thanks to all our esteemed panelists, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the human rights activists, campaigners, supporters, and defenders worldwide for their diligent effort in advancing human rights globally. And let us grow this camaraderie in standing up for human rights today and always. And the final prayer is that let's call upon the world for peace, justice, and stronger institutions, just strengthening the UN's SDG goals locally and globally. And thank you once again. And since this is about inspiring others, I would like to end the session by quoting Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's words, which are, "Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." So thank you so much for being with us, and thanks to our esteemed panelists once again for being with us and for supporting No Passport Voice.